The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Planted with Sara Pine. I'm Sara Pine, your host, and today we have Barbara Platts, editor of Sweet Jane magazine. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sara. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited to have you here. I love the fact that you have a cannabis publication that is geared towards women, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, because whereas in the medicinal days, there was a lot of influence by women, we were looking at it changing the way that we look at business, especially with that glass ceiling or green ceiling, maybe in our case. But as we've gotten into legalization and we're starting to see some of the traditional, how would you say it, structure of business falling in, we're finding more and more women are falling by the wayside, and we need to engage and change that. And I think Sweet Jane is a great part of what we need to be doing.
Yeah, you're so right. It's funny, even from a business perspective, a lot of surveys right now are showing that, women between 30 and 60 are the biggest group consuming cannabis right now. But yet a lot of what the stories out there, a lot of the brands out there aren't really catered toward us. And I think it's important that we're part of the conversation and that we're sharing what we know with people that have been in cannabis, or interested or consuming cannabis for a long time, and people that may just be trying it for the first time.
Yeah. Well, I remember before we were into legalization and cannabis was becoming somewhat more mainstream, but I say that from a place of privilege because I'm sitting here in lovely Oakland where we've been having it for a while. But, before this, I always found, as a woman who enjoyed cannabis, that I found more guys that were interested in consuming, but that wasn't necessarily so. It was that I think in many ways women were keeping it to themselves more. It was more of a private thing. And now we're seeing with more women consuming, we're seeing really interesting products coming out. And, even though because the cost of entry is so prohibitively high and we don't see as many investors investing in female-fronted companies, we still are seeing women stepping up and taking leadership in the industry. And I'm really hoping that there's more of a push to support that, because there's this, and I say this, I'll preface it with, I love guys. They're wonderful. They have a lot to offer. There's some sensitive, thoughtful men out there, and I see you. Hello. But there's also this side of business that has a very male oriented characteristic, where it's not so much about the care and the thought as much as it is build it up, get it out, sell it, make some money, and we'll deal with the repercussions later.
Yeah, I think you're right. And obviously, I'm sweeping with the broad brush, but, I think it is a lot more get it out. It's a lot more focused on the individual. And I think women bring in the component of community. And I think they bring in the component of, wanting to talk things out and understand things a bit more. And I think that's so important in this industry, because it's been around for a long time, of course, the industry, but it's shifting constantly. And we really have an opportunity to start this from the ground up in a way. I mean, we already have started it, but when it goes federally legal, it's an opportunity. And do we want it to be like all of the other industries, or do we want it to be equitable? Do we want it to be, I don't know, just more of a, I guess a team, more of a team, more supportive of each other, like co-opetition, as some people call it. I
like that.
I think we have the chance to, right? I got that from Nancy Whiteman, the CEO of Wana Brands. And she's always practiced that, which I like. She's like, it's not that we're not competing, but we should help each other out too. And I think women oftentimes bring that to the table in a different way than men do. And so I think it's vital we're part of the industry. It's vital we're part of the conversation on the business side, on the advocacy side, on the education side. There's a lot of components there.
Yeah, for sure. And before we dig into more of that, I want to start out with, well, I guess we've already started, but what was your first cannabis experience?
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, you said, sitting in a place of privilege. I am also right now. I'm in Boulder, Colorado, and I grew up here. Lived in California for a while. Went to school in Boston, but came back here to settle down. And I think my first experience was outside of a church. On a Saturday night, like at midnight, with some friends, and we were just walking around bored, 16-year-olds who didn't have anything to do, and someone pulled out a joint. I'm sure just made like horribly, like the first time you'd ever made it, and we were all really nervous. And then finally, we're just like, let's do it. And I don't even remember if I felt anything. I think I thought I felt something, but people always say you don't always feel it your first time. But I think it was, even living in Boulder, it was built up in my head as something that was just bad. Like, I was okay with drinking beers and wine and stuff, but it wasn't okay to smoke weed. And then I kind of just made that decision. And I was like, well, this is what's everyone freaking out about. And after that, I loved it. In 18, I got my medical license. And I've loved it ever since. I think, at the beginning I was, I think it's developed more into pacing myself more than I used to. I know my dosage, when at the beginning you're just kind of trying, especially when you're like a teenager, trying everything. And you're like, oh, well, I'll try this. Oh, can I smoke before class? Oh, just testing the boundaries. But now I'm kind of like, okay, I know when and where. But it's been, what is that? What a 14, 15-year love affair. And it's been fun to watch it evolve in Colorado and nationally.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when Colorado passed rec, I was really surprised that it happened before California. But
yeah,
it was good because we got to, I think that one of the things that's wonderful about watching things evolve is how we can learn from one another and not reinvent the wheel constantly. And I think that, when we're looking at policy and the way things are set up, there's also that sensitivity to culture as well, because state culture is really strong. Although I think, and maybe it's because there are a lot of people from California who went to Colorado. But I do think in many ways that the culture is very similar, especially around like health and getting out and doing things. And there's definitely like a lot of things that Colorado and California have in common.
Totally. I think spending time, I lived in LA, but even there, I felt like there were so many similarities between Boulder and LA. And I think it's been interesting, yes, because California is obviously the oldest market in medicinal, but it was interesting that they came around to the legal market a little bit later. And it's still interesting to see. I think most of the rules are pretty similar. I think that California has some more environmental rules as far as testing than Colorado, but it's kind of interesting to see how, maybe we try something like when cannabis first became legal in Colorado, Chiba chews were a big thing. They're still around, but people were getting these Tootsie Rolls and these little cookies that were 100 milligrams, and people just were like, oh, I'll just pop that in my mouth. And people were freaking out. There were people that were calling the hospital saying they thought they were dying because they were just so paranoid. And a New York Times columnist wrote a story about like just falling into like lying on her bed for 8 hours. She couldn't get up.
That was the worst investigative journalism ever. I refer to that one in most of my classes.
Yeah, I noticed. Oh, but it was, they got all this attention. Like, what are Marine? Yes. It got all this attention. Like, what are these edibles? And then it kind of made Colorado rethink. Like, okay, we need to make sure that these are 10 milligram servings, at least for the recreational market, and they are divided up. You can actually see the serving. It's not just one piece that's 100 milligrams. And I think little things like that are good. It's to kind of it's testing the water, and then like, okay, that was a little too much. Maybe we need to try something a little different. And I think a lot of states now have a similar style with edibles. They're not just going to give you 100 milligram little piece of taffy. They're going to split it up for you. So I just think it's, we're learning things from each other. And I think that's great, state by state.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think along with that, it helps reteach people critical thinking, because, people just are like, oh, well, it's legal now. Well, now I can just eat this whole candy and not ever consider dosage. And I'm like, well, and I hate making this this comparison because it is not the same, and like, just because you can have a cocktail doesn't mean you should drink a fifth of something.
Exactly.
That was the thing that always, and I say this as a person who did it myself, because when I was going through chemo and I had gotten this cannabis beverage that I don't think they even make anymore called Irish Moss. And it was a very strong one. And nobody had a conversation with me about dosage. It wasn't something I thought about. I drank too much of it. I went to my first conversation with my oncologist about chemo, and I found myself being extraordinarily high there. And then I got home and I was like, why didn't I consider THC dosage? And it's something that now I think is in the foremost of my mind, and I think people should always be aware of it. But we're not unless we're taught.
Yeah, it's true. And I think I like to hand it to bud tenders a lot. I think if someone asks me suggestions, like they're coming to Colorado or they're going to a dispensary for the first time, I give them a couple suggestions, but I'm like, talk to the people there, because they're there all the time and they like talking about it. And so I think it's, but then on the other hand, sometimes people that work at dispensaries have a much higher tolerance than someone that's trying it for the first time. So, but I do think, there needs to be more education. Like, one of our most popular stories on sweetjanemag.com is edible dosage. And it's just the most basic guide on gummies. But people Google that all the time because they don't know. And you pick up a package and it doesn't tell you, it just tells you what's in it. But it doesn't, people don't understand the milligram system until they start and look into it. And so I think that's why education is so important. What you're doing, what we're doing, we need to just talk about it and talk about it and talk about it.
Yeah, I agree. And conversation is normalization. That's what I always like to say too. It's like, when we can have conversations about it, people can, ask more questions. They can, the one thing that I always ask people, well, what's the dosage for this or what's the dosage for that? I'm like, well, what's going on with you? Like, how sensitive are you to other substances? How sensitive are you to pharmaceuticals? How sensitive are you to coffee? Like, let's ask these questions. Like, let's delve within ourselves and see how we metabolize other things, because in many ways that will inform us about how we need to approach our initial experimentation with cannabis. Like,
Totally.
some people are, someone will say, oh, this is ridiculous. But some people, 1 milligram is all it takes to get them where they need to go. And when people are embarrassed about that, I'm like, you have no idea how much money you save. That's amazing. Like, keep that tolerance low. Do it.
Yeah. I'm honestly almost in that boat. Like, I found my sweet spot at about 2.5. I can go up to 5, at least for edibles. I feel like I can smoke joints all day, but it's something about edibles just treats me differently. And I love 2.5. I love the little dose gummies coming out now. It's perfect.
Yeah, I love that too. And my tolerance for edibles is much lower than my inhalables. And I know people who don't metabolize edibles at all. So it's like, when we are looking at the different ways of using cannabis, they are different substances in themselves, really, because our bodies metabolize them differently. So when I used to work in the dispensary and someone would say, oh, I want to try an edible, and I have a really high tolerance for smoking, and it was usually a dude. He's like, oh, I've been smoking for over 30 years. Like, yeah, whoa, so have I. Let's talk about it. But just, you still might be a cheap date on the edible side, even if you can consume a lot of THC on the inhalable side.
Yeah, and it's always so funny. It's like, it's not a contest.
No, it's not. Unless you want to have one with yourself. I mean.
Yeah, yeah, if you want to compete with yourself, but it's like, yeah, and it's funny, and I think that's where we started with edibles when they became legal in Colorado. It's like, how high can you go? And then I was like, oh no, that's not good. We don't need to be.
Yeah,
we don't need to be doing that.
I think we saw a lot of that in California too. And then when we got into legalization and we dialed it back into the 5 and 10 milligram increments, which I think is really good. But now as we're starting to mature, we're starting to have some higher dosage products that are easy to dose out, with the caveat that they are high dosage, so that we can help people who have higher tolerances who don't want to spend a ton of money just to get where they need to go with that feel, especially from the medicinal side. Because as we get into medicinal and recreational at the same time, recreational is always going to win out for products, especially when we're looking at it from an inventory standpoint, because how many, consumers do you have getting their recommendations to be able to purchase medical products? Not so many these days, especially because we get more people than ever before coming in using it medicinally through recreational, or I like to say adult use purchases, because then they don't have to talk to anybody about getting a recommendation.
Yeah, paperwork, or I don't know how true it is now, but it used to be your name is now in a database, or you have a record now if you can't ever work for the government, or things like that. If you I was paranoid about that when I was 18. I was like, I don't know if I can work for the federal government, but then I was like, I don't know if I want to. But
Right?
getting your name in a medical database, and it's I think people don't like that either, that kind of then there's a record in a sense. But a lot of people need it, and you're right. I mean, we can't charge people that are really struggling, people going through chemo, people going through a lot of pain that are using this as a medicine. They should be able to get this at a reasonable price. I do think that you have to treat the medical and the recreational market differently.
Yeah. I believe that too. I also believe we have to do a lot more to preserve the medical market, because we have a lot of really vulnerable people who don't have as much help as they should with this. But before we get into that, how did you get into cannabis? How did you start writing for Sweet Jane, and what do you like the most about your work?
Yeah, I started. It's actually funny. I met Katie Ibsen she's the founder of Sweet Jane magazine, and I met her through kind of a mutual friend who is a lobbyist in Kansas. She's not a consumer, but she fights for cannabis rights and the market in Kansas, and she just introduced us because I was a writer. I was working at a show on American Public Media Marketplace, and I was looking to do some freelancing because I was more on the marketing side there. So she introduced us, and I just had a conversation with Katie on the phone. And I guess, I was very into journalism, and I didn't think about it from cannabis necessarily. I was a consumer and I was a journalist, and those were two very separate things. Not purposefully, that's just kind of how they worked out. But I started just doing some freelance stories for her, and it was really fun. And it just kind of made me realize, if you're, as a reporter, this is a pretty fascinating industry to report on. There's a lot happening. In agriculture, it's the most exciting thing we've seen in hundreds of years. I mean, it's just a very, there's so much going on, and there's so much to learn. So I just started getting a little more into it. And then I became the online editor for Sweet Jane magazine. And then COVID hit, and we'd already had 2 print issues. But then at that point, it wasn't, everybody was uncertain. Advertisers were uncertain. Everything just felt a little unstable. So we said, let's go digital for now and just kind of see what happens. So I became the online editor and worked on that side of things. And we just now, that was March 2020. So we just now came out with a few months ago, came out with our 3rd print issue, and our first since the pandemic. That was the parenting edition. Thank you. And that was, so I guess it's, and about 6 months before that, Katie asked me to be the editor-in-chief. So she was doing publishing and being the editor, and it was too much. She wanted to focus on one. So she brought me on, and it's been such an honor. I learn something new every day. I meet so many amazing people, and I think that's the most fun. I mean, I think there's so many aspects I love. I love telling stories. I love, being able to share things and teach people things and learn things myself. But I think it's really inspiring, just the people you meet, both men and women, that are just, love this plant, or love something, some aspect of cannabis, and want to share their story. I think that's probably my favorite part. And there's so many stories to tell. I wish we had, wish we could, print hundreds of pages every time, we put an issue out. But so I think that Yeah, I think my favorite part is the people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, with all the different people that are doing so many interesting and great things, it's like you have a lot of content, you know.
Yeah.
And to have
Yeah.
been able to like, do you think that like being with a magazine through an extreme event like a pandemic and kind of seeing like the pause, which I mean we all went through, there was a time where I think we were all looking at each other just like with our hands in the air, like what do we do now, what's happening, to like that
Yeah,
it's
totally.
like the like my background is in org psych, so I talk about like with organizational change, we call it like storming, norming, and reforming. And it's like, I think it was like a collective storming, norming, and reforming for the past 2 years, where everyone's figuring out like, where am I sitting? What am I doing? And some people are like, you mean I could have been doing this all along and it would have been okay? Like, just there's what did you learn through taking the magazine through an extreme time like this?
Yeah, storming norming. I like that. Yeah, I think well, I think that's a good point too. What you said. I think a lot of people more came out of the green closet during that time.
Mm-hmm.
People we a lot of people started podcasts or they about it at that time. It's because they were stuck at home and they didn't know what to do and they wanted to talk more about it. I think we have stories of parents finally talking to their kids about their consumption and vice versa. And so I think it kind of allowed. I don't know. I think in some ways it allowed us to be a little more of ourselves. Like we kind of just came. I don't know. I mean, maybe it was not going into the office all the time and just kind of having to be with ourselves all day. And then I think in some ways people became more honest about it and more open. I would even say me personally during that time. I mean, I shared the stories I wrote for Sweet Jane, but I think even I felt like I don't know, like what's the big deal? It's a plant and we're enjoying it. And I think it helped a lot of people through and in a really tough time. Sorry, I'm not being very eloquent in this, but
No,
I
you're
think it
great.
shifted a lot of things. I don't know about business wise, but it I think it just allowed us to be a little more of ourselves.
Yeah.
And just like how I mean, people drank a lot more. I think people smoked a lot more, and it.
I ate dessert a lot more for the first few months until I started to realize that I needed to like cut it back.
Right, right. I think we all leaned into our vices a little heavily, and then I think most of us found a way to settle down or equal out,
Yeah.
equalize it.
Well, in
But
the beginning, it was like, it's the end of the world. Eat dessert. Let's make it
yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah. Who cares?
That's it. That's it. And then I was like, when I finally like left the house and went to put jeans on, I was like, oh, moment of reckoning. Okay.
Yeah,
Stretch your pants for a little bit. Be gentle with
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. Be gentle with yourself. Uh, yeah, it's interesting. I'd be interesting to do a story actually on that. The what did change during the pandemic. I mean, we know it was a struggle for a lot of businesses, but a lot of businesses also thrived.
Yeah.
I think cannabis delivery became a lot more popular. I know it did in LA. That's where I was for the first part of it. So it's interesting from a business perspective how it helped. But I think the sad part is I think women, a lot of women had to leave the workforce. I mean, I don't think I know. I mean, the numbers were in the millions, and I think we saw what was it? What's the stat I was looking at today? In 2017, 37% of executive level roles in cannabis were led by women. Women fulfilled the 37%, and today it's 22%. So, you know, I think that's part of it. Is people had to the primary caregivers had to go home. They had to teach their kids. And I'd like to think it's changing and women are getting back out there. But I think I don't know. I think that's it's sad.
Yeah, well, and I remember when that 37% number came out, there were a lot of women in the industry that were like, what the heck happened even then? Because it had been such a much higher percentage before. I mean, when we were looking at, legalization in California. And at that point in time, there was a really, really strong group of leadership in California that were female. And
Mm.
as we started dealing with permitting issues and all trying to get cash flow, and it became really, really difficult. And I see it in waves where I'll look on LinkedIn or on social media and I'll see a bunch of people, and a lot of them are women, and they're like, "Yep, I'm leaving the industry. I'm going to something else." This isn't sustainable, but they put their heart and soul into beautiful products, which some of them I miss very much. And I miss the presence of these women in our community and what they had to bring. And I
Mhm.
just wonder like what we can do to, outside of like the ease of entry and the things that we look at, like, the fact that men tend to be much better with being able to get financing, and it's hard enough because of the banking situation with cannabis, and
Mhm.
then you're also dealing with sometimes with investing. You have people who don't have the best of intentions that are really coming from the cutthroat world of business where they're like, yeah, I'll give you the loan and then I'll own your company later because you won't be able to pay me back. There's just like,
Mhm.
there's so many, there are so many things that can get in the way for anybody to start business, but especially when you're female. And, we are looking at, even though as times have changed, like I was talking to my nieces the other week and I was like, when Auntie was born, women couldn't get credit cards in their own name. That wasn't too long ago. That was in the
Wow.
70s, you know. But we're still very much, whether it's through society or biology, we're more about when things go to shit, like huddling up and taking care of the family and doing whatever we need to do to make things happen, which,
Exactly.
yeah, well, means sometimes stepping away from your heart's work.
Yeah. Yeah. And we in our parenting edition, we actually had a piece on the childcare industry in cannabis, and there aren't a ton of numbers out there, specifically related to childcare in the cannabis industry, but there are, um, the Women in Cannabis study by Jennifer Wetzel, who came out, but it came out a few months ago.
Yeah.
It did say that it included 1,600 participants, and found women and found that only 0.02% received child care benefits. And they also found that 3% of women business owners offer child care benefits within the industry. And I don't think that's always the company's fault. They can't, like you said, they can't get loans. The banking system's a problem, but they can't. Most companies, we called a lot of companies asking, do you have childcare benefits, and big ones too? And a lot of them said, no, here's what we do have. We're trying to help, but it's not very present in the industry right now. And I think that would be one thing that would help uh, bring some women back into it, or into it for the first time. That's just one small factor, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting. I also, like, I found, going to a lot of the conferences, like I went to the conferences when they were much smaller, back in the day when you actually could get like samples of products at a, at a conference. It was kind of like trick or treating. Um, but
Just like Halloween.
yeah, totally, totally. Somebody once referred to it as hippie Halloween to me, and I was like, yeah, but not everybody's a hippie, so you can't really say that.
Oh,
To now, where it's like there's definitely like more of a, I don't know. It's just it's a different vibe. It's a very I find that it's not as let me get to know you as what can you do for me?
oh yeah, just more transactional.
More transactional. And it's, and that's, I think, one of the things that I love about working with other women is, yeah, there are some women who can be transactional too, sure. We're all, men, women, we all run the gamut of the spectrum. But I found that by and large, the women that I've met in the industry are really about helping each other out and not necessarily take, but also, hey, let's work on this together, or you help me with this, let me help you with that. And I feel like if we could build up more of that, and I think it's really hard to, because there are people who are trying to do it, but they're also looking at how to sustain themselves and fill the well while they create these communities. And how do you do that, and charge dues for people who are struggling to make things work to begin with, and then they have to kind of contribute to all these different groups to be able to have the networking to grow their businesses. It's like it's a loop.
Yeah, it is. And I wonder what will happen when it is, federally legal. I know a lot of people are kind of like, oh, I prefer decriminalization to legalization on a federal level, but I think it's necessary, for several reasons. I think I think it thousands, hundreds of thousands of sentences need to be commuted for people in jail for drug crimes and drug offenses. But and I think the banking system's another reason. But I do always wonder, like I try to think, compare it to what will it be? Will I like think of the beer industry? Will there be like the Budweiser? There probably will be like the Budweisers and the Coors Lights, but I hope there's like still the craft brews and the people that are like just experimenting and trying things that not everyone else is trying. I don't know what exactly where we'll be or how it'll shake out, but I hope there's still a very grassroots side to the cannabis industry where we'll see more of that community and people helping each other out. I'm sure there will be big money and there will be that side of it, but I hope there's the other side that always exists.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think that there will be. I mean, just like with the alcohol industry, where for the longest time it was a lot of the big companies and you weren't seeing smaller producers, but then they started popping up and people understand the value of it. Like, here in the Bay Area, we have, artisan winemakers, and there's like company that does some really great gin. Like we have some distilleries, and I remember like in the 90s when the craft beers started kind of popping up, it kind of reminded me of like how movies started just being very big and blockbustery, and then we started having like the indie films, and then people were like, oh yeah, this is what I like, this is what I remember. And it kind of reminded them of like that golden time of like indie film in the 70s. And it's like, I think that we'll have...
Now we have TikTok.
Now we have TikTok. And that scares me.
Everyone's a filmmaker now.
Everyone is. We all create content in our own way. There's something for everyone.
Exactly. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But no, I hope you're right that people want that indie. They don't want just the big blockbuster hits.
I think it's part of a healthy industry, and I think that it's really important when we see in states where, well, going back to just the federal thing, another thing that's important is taxation, because people who work in the industry can't claim a lot of the business expenses that other businesses can, and that's a huge thing. And actually, when I used to work on the floor for my company, I remember finding out from my boss that when he did his taxes, that a portion of my work was actually categorized to the federal government as trafficking. So like 3/4 of my job was as a trafficker. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, for somebody, I don't have a record. Like, yeah, I'm not like, goody two shoes.
Was my name on that?
Yeah. Yeah, but I've kept my nose clean through the years. So I was like, oh, can't wait to tell mom that.
Yeah. Maybe not going to put that one on my resume.
Professional trafficker. There we go. That'll give you some cred.
Yeah, but I mean, you're on the business side of things. I don't know how you do it with just not being able to take out loans or have a bank back you. I mean, we've even had issues like that at Sweet Jane of people we're not selling cannabis. But people are like, oh, loaners like, we don't want our name behind that.
Yeah,
like we're just an educational magazine. it's totally legal. But I don't know how you do it in the industry.
It's a tough thing, and that's also another reason that I've never really considered doing a plant touching business, because like for me, when I was teaching at San Francisco City College, and I created the first cannabis curricula for that college, and you had to have professional liability insurance. I had to spend a lot of money to get it, and I was not handling the plant. I wasn't creating a product. I was just teaching at a college. And then the next year, they dropped me because I taught about cannabis. And I was like, there's no plant matter in my house that I'm processing or selling. I am not exchanging any money for products. I'm not even like the person that it passes through. I'm not negotiating anything that has to do with product. But it was just for the simple fact that cannabis was part of the curriculum.
And when was this?
That was 3 years ago.
Just, I'm like, I was like hoping you'd say 10 years ago or something. Just 3 years ago. What?
Yeah.
In California.
Yeah. And I'm sure there are people still dealing with that. Fortunately for me, it's like I'm not teaching at a college any longer, so I don't have to, have that kind of, coverage, but like it would be difficult. And it was like $800 for the year.
And it's just, I don't know when educating people about things like cannabis became bad, or, why is that? Knowledge is power. Why are we not, don't we want people to be safe? Don't we want people to be healthy? If you're censoring things about cannabis, then we're going to have more problems with it, not less. It's like, people aren't going to know how to take it. They're going to take too much, or there's nothing. Oh, that's so frustrating.
We could go down the route hole of the things that people should be taught. I mean, it's like cannabis and sex education, two things that we should be teaching. And we've got people saying, don't teach sex education, teach people to abstain. It's like, oh, well, great. We've just set everyone up for success. Let's do this.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of similar. Like you said, we just teach people to abstain from cannabis in like your high school health class. And it's like, well, that's not going to help. And then, you're trying it, and you're a high school kid or you're a college kid, and you try it. You're like, what's the big deal? Like, everyone told me this was evil, or this was a gateway drug. It's like, it's just, and then people are smart enough. They're like, well, now I'm being lied to by the government or by my school.
The more that we teach, the more it's normalized, and the less stigma there is. One of the things people worry about in policy is youth access, right? Oh, what about the children? Well, guess what? If you don't teach them about it and you create this mystique and stigma around it, if you were as precocious as I was when I was a kid, I was like, sign me up. I want to try it. Like, it's, the minute that it's like, oh, breaking it down, like, this is what it is. This is what you should consider with dosage. This is what this does. This is what this does. And, like when I've talked to my nieces about it, I'll say, because my sister-in-law is like, wow, what are your thoughts on children using cannabis? And even though I was a precocious kid, like I got high and I went to honors chemistry. Not a great idea, but I still did well in class. But, when you think about, like, I think that if for people who are underage using cannabis, it should only be done medicinally. I mean, kids are going to be kids, and they're precocious and they experiment, and that's part of our evolving into adulthood. But it's also a really critical time with our neurodiversity, because we see a lot of things popping up in our early to mid 20s, especially things like schizophrenia, bipolarism, and, just different things that can happen. And so I think, there's a lot that should be taken into consideration with like the history of neurodiversity in a family and genetics and things like that. And like, you can't stop kids from doing what they're going to do. So arm them with the information so they can make educated decisions for themselves and be safe about it. But you can also have the conversation about your brain is developing right now and it's a really critical time and you really need to be careful. Like just really getting kids informed so that they don't go off and make, because they're going to do what they're going to do, but help them make smart decisions.
Yeah, totally. An issue, a story we had in our last issue was a lot about concentrate use amongst teens right now. It seems that teenagers are using a lot of, they're dabbing more, using vapes more, but they're doing high concentrates with a lot of THC in it. And it's causing some people to get sick and go to the hospital, or they call it greening out, right? It's that they're just start throwing up because they're consuming so much THC. And that, this article was in the parenting edition, so it was kind of in a way like, parents, like, you should be aware of this. And a lot of teenagers like it because it doesn't smell as bad, and you can just go quickly into the bathroom in between classes and do it. I talked to a few parents, and one mom who said, I have to have open conversations with my daughter about this. A lot of her friends do these concentrates, and she's like, I know that she's going to consume cannabis. She's found it, she loves it, but I encourage her to get flower. I try to tell her not to do concentrates, and everyone's going to parent differently, that's, especially like you said, with all the neurological things and findings, I would much rather have my child smoking some flower than concentrates in that amount. And I think if we don't talk about this and we don't put this information out there, how's anyone going to know? It's
well, we have to look at things from a harm reduction perspective. Like even when I taught at City, I was going to teach the classes on my own, but I actually requested having a professor at the university who was a psych professor with a background in harm reduction to partner with me on it, because we have to have the conversations around relationships with substances. Like people will say, oh, cannabis isn't addictive and it's never been addictive. And it's like, okay, so maybe it's not physically addictive, but we can psychologically have a bad relationship with anything. And we need to unpack this stuff and talk about it, because when we have people in the industry that are like giving people a hard time about, talking about their struggles with cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, you can't bully people about that. These things happen. Even though our bodies are built to work with cannabinoids, we create our own endogenous cannabinoids. We don't always respond well to phytocannabinoids. It's okay. Like, it's not going to tank an industry if we have a conversation about the spectrum. Oops, as I hit my microphone, of, the very positive and beneficial to the things that we need to keep an eye out for. Because if we don't have that, and going back to like when I had Michael Steele on the podcast, we talked about the Tylenol moment. It's like, it's where people are surprised by something negative that happens, and then it rolls into this huge snowball of negativity where everything is bad and you throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because as human beings, we tend to go either things are really great and it's like the panacea, or it's really horrible and it's the devil. And guess what? 9 times out of 10, it's shades of gray. And we need to be, informing people and having conversations and be cognizant of what's going on with our bodies and exercising critical thought so that people can enjoy it. Because it's like, I can't tell you like how many times I like look at somebody and I go, and that's why we can't have nice things.
It's true. And I think, having a journalism background and, learning that side of it first, I think our industry, I think we have a lot of advocacy journalism out there, and I think there's totally a place for advocacy journalism, but I think it's also important that we're looking at both sides. And I get it. People have been waiting for this plant to be legalized. They've been waiting for it to be decriminalized, and people are frustrated and they don't like bad news, like talking about cannabis hyperemesis syndrome or cannabis use disorder or other things that are negative about the plant. But if we want a functioning industry, we do need watchdogs, and we need people to have honest conversations. It's not, cannabis isn't just a cure-all. It is something wonderful. It's a wonderful plant, and there's so much we can learn from it still, and it's helped so many people. But if we just, yeah, if like you said, it has to be shades of gray. If we just say this is amazing and there's nothing wrong with it, and don't listen to anyone that says differently, then that's going to do us all a disservice.
Yeah, well, I think that, true advocacy is firmly rooted in reality.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to give people the full landscape of what we're working with so that people can make educated decisions for themselves. Or if they find themselves in a spot where they're uncomfortable, they understand why. Because, even though there are things that aren't necessarily like the most flowery positive things around cannabis like we just talked about, there are also things that don't kill you. And they're just things that you need to be aware of so that you have your toolkit and you can be, you're not like, I had somebody once call me when I was still working in the stores. I was like super high and took more of an edible than they needed to. And they're like, oh, I'm not breathing. I'm like, well, you are, because we're talking on the phone, but I understand that you're feeling weird and it's scary and you probably have a tight chest. Like, are you home? Get yourself comfortable, drink some water, stay away from sugars and fats because that can intensify the high. And then she was like, ooh, pizza. And I'm like, see, girl, you're going to be okay. Like, just relax, get your jammies on, put on a
Yeah.
movie. Like, it's really, because you have one bad experience can create, somebody who's totally turned off and against something just because they weren't given the tools to be able to succeed, or just to understand that maybe if it's not right for them, it doesn't mean that it's not right for everybody. Because that's
Yeah.
the thing. It's the broad strokes of judgment that happen around this when people aren't as well informed as they should be.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't say it better myself. That's it. We all need to be informed, and it's a fine line. It's, finding, understanding it all, and not I don't know, not feeling uncomfortable with it, and but also not putting your rose tinted glasses on and saying there's no problems. But there's a fine line of, yeah, we need to approach this in an accurate and clear way. And I think the more research we do, and the more, we communicate what's out there and what we're learning, the better off we'll be. Another good side of, I think, of federally legalizing is hopefully there could be a lot more research.
I know. We need a lot more research, but I also think that, publications that are, friendly and inviting like yours open the door for conversation where we see more normalization and people talking to, like, I remember like when Sanjay Gupta came out with his series of videos. I had this woman in her 80s come in and she's like, if Dr. Gupta says it's okay, I feel like I can try it. It's like, yeah, I just, you don't have to
Yeah,
do something that gets you high. Just try something, if you need it. It's,
totally. And I think bridging the gap, just having people understand it. I think we talked about this once before, but, I think we're both from the Midwest, uh, originally, right? And
yeah.
and so is Katie, who I work with Sweet Jane, and she's from Colorado, but she spent a lot of time in Kansas. I was born in Kansas, but moved to Colorado. But I feel like when we come up with stories, in a lot of ways, we're trying to talk to like our aunts and our uncles and our friends that are, maybe in states where it's still illegal. We're trying to bridge that gap and show that this is not scary. This is okay. I like here, and most of the time, people want to talk about it. They're curious. I mean, every once in a while, you have people that just kind of change the subject, but a lot of times, people want to ask questions and they want to know more. And I think it's just providing that outlet. Like, hey, we're here. Here's some info. We're here. We're ready to talk when you are.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're right. I think people are more open to it than they were before. Like when I started working in cannabis a decade ago, we were still getting trained on what happens with a federal raid. And I'd gone from a middle management job to working in cannabis. And my thing, if I hadn't gone through cancer, I'm pretty sure I would have gotten a lot more pushback from my family. But I was kind of like, I just survived. I get to do what I want. I get the free card. So back off. I'm going back to school and doing my thing. And they're like, there she goes, having her crazy post cancer crisis. Let's let her run with it. But it's like
she's still running.
I'm still 11 years later. I'm still running.
Do you feel like since then, though, your family's been more supportive, or have even like been curious to try it themselves?
Yeah, I mean, my mother actually, she's gonna kill me for saying this. She actually used to like it, like even before I was born, and I found out that when I was really little, and my aunt would come visit, that they would go outside and have a smoke. I didn't know that until later. Like she made it sound like she never tried anything and I was a virgin birth. It was like I had no idea. But now as she's older, and she's actually she's retired, but she's a cancer researcher, and she did the clinical trials on the protocol that I ended up taking years later. And because of her, I knew that I could use it to help with nausea and stuff like that. But as she's gotten older, she's just like, yeah, I don't know. That's not my thing. And, I'm like, you're not going to lose your license anymore. You're like retired woman. Like there's nothing about that. But I found like when I went up for my grandmother's memorial, and I was meeting up with family, and I was kind of worried about what they would think, because they're definitely a lot more proper than I am. I love them. They're just way more proper than I am. And they actually had questions, and they're like, it's cool what you do. Like, I'm interested in it. And, when I first started, like even telling like friends or just people that I meet what I did, sometimes people would be very turned off by it. But then it got to the point where, like one time I was at a friend's birthday party, and I actually had to leave, not because I had offended somebody or somebody had offended me, but because I wanted to like hang. And this woman kept at me with like all these industry questions and how to get a job and da 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 da. And I was like, I'm off the clock, mama.
Yeah.
I want to have fun and enjoy this birthday party. You're kind of intense. So I just went out the back door.
Little French exit.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah.
Just a little. But it's, it's exciting to see how things are changing, and I'm really hoping that there are going to be more women re-entering now that we're getting into this new normal. And the pandemic, though it's becoming endemic, it's like we're learning, as human beings, we're incredibly adaptable. So we're learning to live in a whole new way. And I have to say that I'm kind of built for this, because I like to stay home and work on stuff. Like, you can give me a project and put me by myself, and I'll just be like, let's do it. But I know not everybody's like that. Like, some people are more social, and we're learning how to live that way.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I was the opposite. I was just extreme extrovert and always wanted to be out. And now I'm just, that's probably also just like, as you get older, you love your home more, and but now I'm like, oh, I have to go out for this. I just want to be at home with my project. So, and I feel like the pandemic did that to me a little, but just kind of taught me to be able to be alone with myself, and that's okay. And you don't, or working from home. I used to always like want to work at an office because I'm like, I'm missing out. But now I'm like, oh, everyone's working from home. We're fine.
Yeah, that's it. Well, and I feel like, when I do have meetings with my colleagues in person, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see them and to connect. But I'm totally okay doing stuff on my own. And I was just thinking about, like, when you were talking about, us being kind of more real, more human throughout all of this. I think that, in the past, like if you were on a Zoom call and it was interrupted by something, or it was dropped, or like your cat jumped on your lap, everybody would be like, so unprofessional. What's happening? And now people are like, we're human. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you'd be starting the pandemic. Everyone's, sorry, hit my microphone. Everyone was just wearing like very nice shirts and, looking all fancy, and now people are like, cool, t-shirt, hair's pulled back, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I have my fancy pajamas that I put on.
There you go. That sounds great.
I invested in like 5 pairs of them, and I'm like, hey, I don't wear them to bed.
in
I wear
every
them to
color.
meetings.
Yeah. I love it. Gotta be comfortable, you know. I couldn't, going to an office and having to be business casual doesn't sound fun.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I know some people are like super excited about that, but you know, I've never been one to be like, let's sport some slacks and make it happen.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there.
And you know, I was just also like with the pandemic, I'm wondering, like when we look at the numbers, like you were right, a lot of people started like coming out of the cannabis closet or actually trying cannabis during this time to create look as human beings we're constantly striving for homeostasis. Like when I had my best attended class online was my sleep, depression and anxiety class. And there was one class in particular where I had like 200 people online for it. And I'm wondering what we're going to see for numbers of people, cannabis users, when things start to calm down. If people are going to keep it as part of their routine, or if it's like, it was for the time, it was coping for the moment, and now I'm in back into my old regime and doing what I do, like going for my runs, drinking my tea, whatever.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's also like another thing that, like, kind of where, yes, we're coming back to quote unquote normal, right? But at the same time, the industry has such momentum behind it, and more places are making it legal or, you know, medically accessible. And so I think, yeah, I don't know if like if we were to look at numbers, like sales numbers, I don't know if we'd see a shift, because I think new people are trying it all the time,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Um, but I don't know. That'd be interesting. I wonder. I feel like that's something we should look at in a year or two.
I think that would be a great thing to revisit in a year or two. And even like doing a survey about people's use during the pandemic, before and after. Actually, before, during, and after, to see what people are
Mhm.
doing. Because I also know some people that, you know, like we were talking about, you know, it's like cocktails, rich food, desserts, it's the end of the world, let's do whatever we want. Like how many people were like, "Oh yeah, I really like got a little crazy with the weed," and then I kind of reined it back because I mean, you know, I know that like for myself, I go through different phases where, especially if I'm having problems sleeping, I may consume more than I normally do. And then when I'm in a space where things are a little bit more balanced, I may, you know, go more towards things that are a little bit more non-euphoric. Like I'm a huge fan of like CBD and CBG during the daytime for focus,
Mhm.
you know. But during the pandemic, there are some days where I was like, you know, we're smoking a joint during the day. That's going to be all right.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I know. I'm even just trying to think personally. Like, I think my use definitely went up. I know my wine use went up, but
I hear that.
but I think, but I think, yeah, I think it did. I think it went up a bit, but I think now, but yeah, I feel like now I just have different tools, like you said, like CBG or CBD, or like I love my little micro doses.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, during the pandemic, it was like, okay, let's just smoke this joint and then this next joint and this next joint, because what the hell else is there to do? You know, so I still feel like my numbers are probably the same as far as using, but I'm just using in a different way, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I've become a big fan of cannabis beverages, especially when I have friends over in the yard, and most of them have lower tolerances. So I have the lower, like the 2 to 4 milligram ones for them, and a 20 for me. And then we're like hanging in the yard, you know, and it's nice because it's like it's kind of like having it is like having a cocktail. It's very social, and you know
Yeah.
you feel the effects, you know, but it's not me talking to somebody like puffing on my joint where like, you know, not everybody wants to be around you when you're smoking weed. And
Yeah.
you know, I always like to be cognizant of that too. But when we are like, let's go back to the magazine, because what are you excited about? Tell me about the new issue. Tell me about what you're working on that you're in the next year that's just gonna that you're just really looking forward to. What are you enthused about?
Yeah. Um, let's see. I think so. Our how-to issue I think when this airs will have just come out, or a couple months before, and it is so that our how-to edition is kind of a mixture of things. It's like we have a consumption section. It's like how to use a dab rig, how to roll a joint, kind of your basics. But then we also look at other things like well-being things, like how to introduce cannabis in the bedroom. Very hot topic. A lot of products out there right now about that, and different. So it's, and then even deeper issues, like we have a feature on how to understand the war on drugs, because we talk a lot about it in this industry, but what really are the effects? When did it start? Why is it still going? Just really trying to break it down a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then soon to come out will be our Grow edition, and that is kind of a new area for us, where we're just looking at the cultivation industry. We're looking at, part of it is, there are articles about, hey, if you want to do your own grow situation at home, how do you do it, indoor or outdoor? I think the grow industry is interesting. I think the barrier to entry feels very intimidating. It feels high and kind of intimidating for some people. But there are ways that you can just try it out, like just have a little plant chilling in your backyard and just see what happens. You don't have to necessarily have huge tents and lighting. So it's trying to kind of show a more approachable side, but also show what people are doing. There are people doing some really interesting things out there. So a little bit of a mixture, just everything grow. And so that's going to be a fun one. I'm already learning so much about it. And it's fun. My husband actually has started. He said he did this for the issue, of course, but he started trying growing a few plants. Yeah, so helpful. And he loves it. He's having so much fun. He just sits on YouTube all the time watching instructional videos and people talking about it. And he just loves it. So it's kind of, and I see these little plants and I'll go down and just sit with them. He has a little tent and I'm just like, you guys are just so pretty. But I'm just like, all this drama over these little guys, they're just a plant, and so it's funny. It's fun to you feel a little bit closer to it when you're watching the process. I mean, I can't really be trusted with them, but it's fun to watch him do it. And so I'm excited about that issue. We also recently got an international correspondent. She's Marguerite Arnold. She's in Germany, but she's been writing some pieces for us looking at Europe and cannabis reform, and those are mostly online, but on sweetjanemag.com. But really liking that because it's just interesting to see how they're going about it, and we're looking at just different countries, and Germany's the furthest ahead right now with cannabis reform, and it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes. So it's fun to see it. We focus so much on the U.S. Because obviously we want to get it legalized and we want it decriminalized, but it's interesting to see what other countries are doing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they interpret it through their lens, especially because, and this might be a gross generalization, but I always find that the Germans are so methodical about the way they approach things, like with process. So what are we going to learn from, what they come up with? I'm really excited to see that. And I noticed that they just had ICBC in Berlin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be super interesting, and I think there was some drama around it, like the people voted for reform and it wasn't happening, and so someone in the government kind of said something like, "Look, we're going to take away your PR budget for the rest of the year unless you get this going."
Wow.
So the article's online. I'm butchering it horribly, but it is interesting to kind of see. It's like the people want it, but it's taking a little longer, and so it'll be fun to see. Hopefully it gets done. So the people are happy about it.
It's really interesting, like when you think about how the United States is the one who basically brought about worldwide prohibition, and now we're the ones going, just kidding. Sorry about that. We had a bunch of industrialists that were worried about their own making money, and maybe some racists tossed in there, and that's why we couldn't have nice things for a while.
Yeah, haha, just kidding. Yeah, let's move on.
Psych.
Yeah, it's true. We're doing that for one of our issues too, the how-to edition, looking at the stigma around it in Asian communities, Asian American communities, but also it's a big history. I mean, there's a lot to it with the opioid epidemic and kind of, a lot of Asian countries just putting the kibosh, like no drugs, zero tolerance policy, and how it really did create this stigma. Even though a lot of that was because of opioids, but cannabis got lumped in, and now there are countries like I think Thailand and Vietnam who are trying to decriminalize or do medical, and but it's a long time. I mean, it's a lot of work because of all of the stigma created around it, and yeah, and I think in a lot of ways that we had to do with that too. So it's just
Yeah, we sure did. I mean, it's a lot of unpacking of a lot of the practices that, we're people are wanting to bring forth to educate people so it doesn't happen again, like deconstructing colonialism. But, then we have people who say, "Oh, well, why are we teaching this? This isn't good." It's like, well, actually it is, so we don't do it again. And
yeah.
you weren't there for that, so you aren't being held responsible, but you are being held responsible to not do it again. So this isn't critical race theory, this is reality.
Yeah, yes, learn it now and so you don't repeat the mistake.
Yeah, because we do. If you see, I mean, the cycles of our history, we repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And we have an amazing opportunity to really change the way we treat people of color, we treat women, we treat, when we look at people in the illicit market who are, you know, they're artisan growers, they're entrepreneurs, they're people who need a way to get into a legitimate industry so that they don't have to be looking over their shoulders, but they shouldn't be so depleted that they can't do their work. It should be creating abundance and generational wealth for anybody who wants to do it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think on that's on a large scale, but I think if you just look at the cannabis industry, I really hope that opportunity is given, and we've seen it happening in some places. I mean, Oakland, San Francisco, they've had some great programs in place, but yeah, we've got to do it right.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do. Even in California, well, actually, I'm going to say especially in California, we've laid the groundwork. There have been a lot of thoughtful advocates and activists that have laid the groundwork for what this should look like, and now we have to do the work and make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and hopefully we get to that point on a national level too.
Yeah, well, we've got amazing, amazing people in so many states that are really pushing for that. And I'm really hoping that when we start looking at federal legalization, well, I mean, we are looking at it, but when we really, really dig into it, that the people who are influencing it on a federal level are able to push forward those values.
Mm-hmm. I know, and it needs to be people that are knowledgeable about it. Like, it can't be like, like when they were trying to figure out ways to limit social media and none of the politicians even knew what like Facebook messaging was. It can't be like that. We need you get the experts in the room who can help with this, and hopefully seeing it in state levels, is hopefully that's helping because we're seeing what's going right and what's going wrong, and hopefully we can bring everyone to the table.
Yeah.
And do it the right way.
Yeah, I hope
I know
that
that's
it's
hopeful, but I
I feel the same way though, because it's an interesting thing, because it is in many ways it's not necessarily the most knowledgeable that get to speak their piece to create good policy that serves the people. It often is people with the deepest pockets, and they're creating policy that benefits their interests. And there are certain policies that may benefit their interests that benefit other people as well, but we really do need to look at this more holistically. And the fact of the matter is, we're doing this today, we're able to do this today because there are critically ill people who needed it.
Yeah.
And when you're sick,
yeah.
it's expensive to be ill, and it's scary, and we can't forget those people. And some of these people are people who are so very touched by their experiences that they have become not just part of the movement, but they have become part of the industry to be able to, take it forward even more. And they they deserve our respect and support, especially when we're looking at, the veteran community and people of color, both Black and brown folks, getting in there and doing the work. It's, and it's not about just creating employees. It's about creating, if a person wants to be an entrepreneur, they should be able to have the opportunity to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Here I go, little Miss Sunshine.
But it's good. We gotta talk about these things, and I mean, I think we gotta have optimism, right?
Yeah.
We gotta, and just hope it goes well. We've certainly, we're all getting a lot of time to try it out in states and to talk about it, and when we get to the point of federal legalization, I hope we're all ready.
I know, me too. If people want to follow you on social media or check out the magazine, where shall they go?
Yes, you can follow us at Sweet Jane Mag on Instagram, and you can also follow me at Barbara Platts, Platts, and our website is sweetjanemag.com. Reach out to us, hit us up. We love to talk, or if you're interested in writing for us, or you got an interesting story, want to share something, so we write something about you, let us know. We're here.
Awesome. And remember, everybody, Planted is twice a month. So check us out. You can listen to us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts: Apple, Amazon, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, Pandora, Spotify. I got them all. Also, our parent network, Radio Misfits Network. You can also listen to the latest episode on www.plantedwithsara.com, and on social media for Instagram and Twitter, we are Planted with Sara. On Facebook, we are Planted with Sara Pion. And of course, if you want to follow me on social media, I am Sara Mitra Pion on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter, I am Sara M. Pion. So you can check out the latest episodes, and if you follow me, you can look at some cannabis education, pictures of my cat, my husband, and the food that I cook. And if you like episodes, if you're enjoying it, share them and give us feedback. We love hearing reviews. And if there's somebody in particular that you want to hear from on the show, let us know, because this is for you. Barbara, thanks so much for joining me today. This was just so much fun, and I'm really looking forward to our future conversations. And I'm so glad that Sweet Jane, I mean, I know that you were around during the pandemic and digital, but I'm so happy for you that you're jumping back into print. And everybody, check out the magazine. It's a beautiful magazine with wonderful contributors and articles. So check it out.
Thank you. And thank you, Sara. That's always so much fun talking to you.
Thank you. And for everybody out there, remember, it's a crazy world. Be kind to each other. We got to be good to each other to make it through the days, even if we're not in a pandemic. And stay curious. Until next time, Sara Pion signing out.